So we're going to build on the common theme for the day, data. And our next session is about using data to better predict the future using past results. Data science and propensity modeling are becoming more a big part of what enterprises are doing within their marketing arsenal. So I'm going to welcome back Michael Lobin, and who's joined by Rohit and Leigh from Estée Lauder. And they're going to talk about how they used customer lifetime value to help their Clinique brand drive some amazing results in their marketing performance. So Michael, I'll turn it over to you.
Brad, thank you so much. Hello, everyone, again. I hope everyone is having a stellar day. And we'll talk for a few minutes about customer lifetime value. What's interesting about customer lifetime value before we get into the definitions and why CLV matters, let's take a quick step back and answer the question from the business side of the table. Why do we need yet another data point? Because certainly it takes some time and effort to get to CLV information, to do that type of analysis. So we better be very clear on why we want to be doing it. And then we'll have the business reason, if you will, to dive into the data and do our analysis, right? So we see CLV as a way to answer three key questions. Number one question is, well, who should we be targeting? Number two is, should we target people in the same way, or how should we vary our promotions, our types of sales, or even digital or purely shopping experience based on CLV information, or based on customer patterns? And number three, something that has been discussed quite a bit in our previous session, can we use this type of information, CLV data, customer lifetime value data, to determine who are the customers that we do not yet have that we should be targeting based on what we know about our existing customer base. Now, on this slide, we can see information about me. I'm Michael Lobin, and if we start segmenting information about me by geography, by my behaviors, by my psychographic, by my demographic, we can get a lot of interesting details about where I live, Cincinnati, Ohio. I fly via Delta, or at least I used to when I was able to. I enjoy active lifestyle, male, obviously, and I'm in marketing field. And a lot of times organizations purely use this information to determine what advertisement or what type of promotion to serve me. The question, though, is that actually enough? And are these data points good indicators of what I'm going to buy and if I'm going to buy at all? Now, over the holiday season, just like you, my email on a daily basis was filled with hundreds of emails around different types of promotions. I was offered 20% off here, I was offered 40% there. And even one of the retailers offered me a $50 gift card if I buy their product for the first time. I've never purchased their products before, but now they were so eager to acquire me that they were offering me gift card. And the question that was in my mind, do I get to keep a gift card if I actually return the product because I don't really need it? That kind of gave me something to think about. Are these indicators actually good, or should we be paying attention to something a little bit different that perhaps is a better indicator of what people might be buying from us? So let's take a look. What is actually customer lifetime value? And the definition, the true definition is of customer lifetime value is the present value of the future net cash flows associated with the customer. Again, let me clarify that this is a forward-looking concept, not to be confused with historical customer profitability. Now, in the past, a lot of times when organizations share their customer lifetime value analysis with us or give us access to their data sets, we see that they're only looking at the historical spend, so how much different customers spent with them, but they are not looking at the projection. How much money can we expect for this customer or for this group of customers to spend with us over years to come? And obviously that it becomes a very important prediction, a very important data point. If I can make the decision and say, look, this is my audience, that is very much likely to spend a lot more money with me, then the question is, what type of experience should I deliver to them to keep earning that revenue? Or the question might be, look, the prediction for this audience is the amount of revenue that I can generate from them is very low. Should I even spend a lot of advertising dollars trying to get them to buy from me, if at the end of the day, what will likely happen is that I will overpay for the acquisition and I will not get the money back? So what actually goes into the CLV calculations? CLV calculation takes into account a number of different data points. We have our churn risk. So what is the probability that the person will not actually be our customer? It takes into account purchase propensity, spending habits, the historical value, how much has been spent with our business up to this point. And by taking those data points into account, we calculate customer lifetime value. Now, again, when we calculate customer lifetime value, it's not the individual's customer lifetime value that is so important to us, but it is rather the ability to group our customers based on this information and extrapolate this information to determine who are the new types of customers that we can bring that will have higher customer lifetime value. Otherwise, what ends up often happening is that we run advertising promotions, we run different campaigns, we generate one-time transaction, but we do not actually earn a customer that will stay with us for an extended period of time. How does customer lifetime value data look? So if you look at the next slide, here's an example of a table that we put together when we perform customer lifetime value analysis for our partners. We have our customer ID, we have total past revenue, so how much has been spent with our business up to this point. We take a look at the profitability, probability that that customer is active. We look at the expected sales over the next 6 months, over the next 12 months, over the next 24 months, and then we look at customer lifetime value. And then based on this information, we put together our segments and we determine how should our marketing, communication, and overall digital experience that we deliver be different based on these types of metrics. So in summary, it allows us to do a very interesting type of CLV-based personalization. If you look at the next slide, CLV helps us think about how to optimize our acquisition spending and customer experience for maximum value rather than just minimum cost. And it positions us for long-term success because, again, it helps us determine how do we attract customers that will not just buy once or twice from us, but customers that will stay with us for an extended period of time. And now I would like to pass this over to Rohit and Leigh to share with us an example of how we've done this at Clinique and what were the results of the work.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you for providing all this great context and the motivation behind our work. Thank you so much. Can you move to the next slide, please? Okay, now moving on to the not so fun part, or maybe the fun part, depending on the interest, that how we actually build this model. What kind of data we used and why, and what was the outcome. So as you can see here on the slide, we built the model in GCP, which is Google Cloud Platform, and leveraged its analytic framework, which includes BigQuery, and we used it as our data storage. Our data set contained close to 3.5 million users with 4 years of transaction history. We took different approaches to build this model. One of them was we tried simple linear regression model. There were some trials on out-of-the-box statistical models, which are also known as buy till you die models, which only leverage the RFM metrics. But we eventually ended up using the neural network model, which is more complex and uses a lot more features along with the RFM metrics. For example, we leveraged our first-party data, their user profile information, their registration date, for example, their opt-in status, their loyalty information, how many points they have, which tier they are in, the products they have purchased in the past at a category level, at a subcategory level, payment method they have used, whether they either have a stored payment method in their account, and a lot of different other data attributes. We also included their site behavioral data, to understand how many times they have been on our site recently. Our hypothesis of including the site behavioral data was that a customer can have one transaction, but they might have multiple recent site visits. It's much more valuable than a consumer who also have one transaction but never came back. Similarly, a customer who makes a transaction and leaves a review on the site is much more valuable than the consumer who just makes a transaction and, again, don't leave a review or don't engage with us after making the transaction. Also, when we looked at the feature importance while building these models, we figured out that, of course, the RFM metrics, they were up there in terms of feature importance, but there were a few surprises, like the stored payment method. If a customer has a stored payment method in their account, they were found to be more valuable than the customer who doesn't have it. Similarly, the products related features, the products they have purchased in the past at a category and subcategory level also helped us to understand what category or subcategory or franchises are driving high value among our consumers. Finally, with all this great work, what do we get back? So model predicts 3 values for us at a user level, which we use. How much they're going to spend in the next 12 months, how many transactions they're going to make in the next 12 months, and their probability to churn in the next 12 months. And this prediction time frame, whether it's 12 months from now or 6 months from now or 18 months from now, it's adjustable depending on the business need. We can change that. And we call this as CLV model, but in reality, there are 3 sub-models under this big umbrella of CLV model, which are predicting these 3 values for us. Now I will hand it over to Leigh, who will share with us how we're bringing this model outputs to life and how are we driving our marketing initiatives.
Thank you so much, Rohit. So I'm going to take you a little bit through how we leverage this day to day. So I think we're going to the next slide, if you could. So we have this amazing model now with the help of InfoTrust and our team working together so beautifully. But what does it do for us? So before we just knew what people did historically, we had that hindsight view that Michael was talking about. Now we can combine that with their predicted behavior. And what that does for us is unlocks new customer segments that we never had before. And as a digital marketer in the very competitive beauty space, I'm always looking for an edge. There's so much competition out there, and I need to have the best performance out of every campaign that's possible. And one of the ways to do that is to improve your targeting. So before this model, we had some basic value targets like a low value consumer or a high value consumer. But now what we can do with the combination of the model and historical data is we have 4 segments instead of just 2. So if you look at that 2 by 2 on the bottom, the top 2 blocks are basically people who are high value today. But what the model uncovers is there's 2 subgroups in that bucket. The first is people who are high value today, but are probably churned. So those are people that you might have a pre-lapse or a lapse program. You might target them with that type of campaign. Then on the right, you have your most valuable loyal customers that are high value today and predicted to be high value going forward, and you want to retain them as best as possible. Then if you look at the bottom 2 quadrants, they're all currently low value customers. And again, you can split them into 2 more focused groups. The first is people who are low value today and predicted to be low value in the future. You might not want to spend a lot of your resources there because they're probably lost to you. So you can conserve your resources and instead focus on the future VIPs who are low value today, but are predicted to be high potential in the future. And that's a much more efficient audience that you can go after. And it's a high percentage of first-time buyers that you can then convert to a second purchase. So if we can go to the next slide, I can tell you how we operationalize this. So with each of our marketing campaigns, we can take these new audiences, and whether that's paid or CRM or even old school things like direct mail, we can use these much better audiences to drive the campaigns. And the 3 main use cases today are, first, retargeting customers based on CLV. So when we first stood up the model, our very first test was in paid social media, and we went after directly targeting those high value loyal people in the top right quadrant. And we saw that it was very effective at finding those valuable consumers, and it uncovered people that you wouldn't have gotten from your basic CRM list. So there were definitely people that might have been dormant for a while or inactive for a while, but were still high potential, and we were able to reach them because of it. And we saw that in paid media, it was one of our highest return on ad spend e-commerce audiences. So we're very happy with that. We're now testing the future VIP audience in multiple channels, and we'll see how that performs. The second major use case is nurturing those consumers. And I talked about those one-time buyers. We have a lot of those in the beauty industry, and I think in many other industries you have a similar challenge. And by breaking down those currently low-value folks into those two groups, you can better target your resources. So you can focus on those future VIPs, and you can do this in paid, but the biggest impact you'll have to go after these folks is usually in your CRM or lifecycle marketing programs and a lot of your owned channels. So that's something that we're working on today. And then the final use case that we're using the model for is to acquire new high-value customers. So now that we know a lot more about who's high value and predicted to be high value, we can create much better audiences. So what we did was we combined information from our CRM list with the information from the high value loyal audience in the model, and that made our lookalike audiences much more accurate. So we could go out and find more of those high value customers. And we're still continuing to test and learn today and apply this in many other areas. We've had great results, and we've had such a great partnership with InfoTrust, but we can still scale this much further. It can be applied to customer service. It can be applied to promotions, as Michael mentioned, where you can really send your richest deals to the customers that matter. But that's just a little bit about how we're applying it today. And with that, I'll kick it back to Michael.
Thank you so much, Leigh and Rohit. Let me ask you a question, since you just shared how you use this information, which is incredibly valuable. How do you, within the organization, how do you think about moving from getting access to the data, right, having this type of analysis, to actual experimentation, right, putting this information to good use and running different types of campaigns, using these new segments to see if there's a difference, if there's a lift? What does the process look like to begin that part of experimentation?
Yeah, so what we decided to go after first is that in our very first in the wild test of this new targeting, we went into the world of paid media. A lot of times, again, you would use these audiences in CRM, but that takes a while to get the results because you got to wait maybe for somebody to open an email over time. And so the way to get a fastest test was to use paid media. So we focused on that loyal audience, and we went out in paid social. And the interesting thing we saw was to try to have a very conservative test, we didn't create new creative at first for that audience. We just served the same creative that we would normally serve, the same offers, but just saw what the difference is between audience A or audience B. And we saw that it was a very effective audience. And so then the next step, after proving that the model works, is to test and learn, right? You still have to then do all of the work of A/B testing different creative to find out what really moves these different segments. But at least now with the more focused segments, you have better insights at where they are in their relationship to you, like whether or not they've churned and so forth. This is an important piece of information when you decide what messages to send them.
Well, one of the themes throughout the presentation, and certainly something that Neil mentioned at the beginning, was building the cross-functional team and the role of a data storyteller, if you will. How do both of you think about building a cross-functional team? On one hand, obviously having the technical skill set that Rohit was talking about and sharing what the technical team has done. On the other hand, Leigh, what you've mentioned, right? How do we ask the right business questions and put this to right business use? Do you have any recommendations to the attendees and to other companies on what right type of team might look like and what skill sets we need to have?
Sure, Michael. This is a very good question. The thing is that whenever we talk about such initiatives, there is so much focus on building the models, right? We always focus around, okay, this model building is an important piece of this, but that's just a small piece in the big puzzle. There is so much which goes around it. There are so many teams, so many people involved in making this initiative a success. I mean, if you talk from the tech perspective, we have data engineers, who are involved right from the start in building those data pipelines and processing the data in a format that can be used for the modeling. Then, of course, we have data scientists who have expertise in machine learning concepts, who actually build the models. And then we have data analysts who actually uses this output from the models and also a lot of other data points about our consumers, the first-party data attributes, and kind of depending on the business need, what is the business requirement, they kind of dig deep into the data and bring insights and share with the teams. Often I've seen that there's a big overlap between these responsibilities. It's a data scientist who is also kind of responsible for analysis and also helps engineers as well. So there's an overlap always there, but that's the kind of three engineers: the data engineer, data scientist, and data analyst from the tech perspective. Now coming onto the business side, we have brand teams, who are responsible for planning and driving these CRM campaigns, to target our consumers across different channels, whether it's Leigh mentioned, whether it's paid media or email or SMS or direct mail even. They are the ones who decides, what content to serve them, or what creative, offers that can be used to target those consumers, what products we target them with. So basically it's the data team who kind of defines that who to target, and then it's the business teams who tells us, how and where to target. And then finally, of course, once all these things kind of decided, then it kind of comes to the final activation where we partner with our teams like, Google itself and external agencies who finally help us, set up the campaign, monitor it, and then share the result back to us.
I love that split, right? So on one hand, we have, let's look at the data and figure out who to target. And on the other hand, let's figure out how and where we can meet them. And one thing, just again to call out about customer lifetime value, and Peter Fader, who wrote a number of books on customer centricity and customer lifetime value, always says that you should not worry about creating an ideal experience for everyone, right? And CLV also is not really a metric just to think about what types of discounts or what types of promotions to offer different audiences. It's really about understanding your overall customer base, your audience, and determining what type of experience you should deliver to each one.
Sure.
Yeah, and I would just footnote that it was so important to work with your team, because not only do you bring the expertise and all the models that you build, but I think a lot of brands must be in the same situation. We're fortunate enough to have a data scientist like Rohit on our team, but even then, we don't necessarily have all the in-house resources to do the scripting and the maintenance of the model all the time. And I think a lot of brands are probably in the same position where they don't have all those people full-time on staff. So it's great to have a partner who does.
Great point. Thank you, Leigh. A couple of things just to round this discussion up. One thing that Rohit mentioned and demonstrated was how we went through the process of determining who to target and the analysis that was done. And there's always a question of, can this be simplified, right? And to what Neil was mentioning at the beginning, at the keynote, there's machine learning and there's other advances within cloud and other solutions. This process can be hopefully done faster and faster as the time goes by. One of the things that I wanted to make sure that I mentioned, and if we look at the next slide, is we've all seen the changes that are coming up in J4, right? Google made a pretty big announcement last year talking about the next iteration of Google Analytics, J4. And next slide, you can see that actually customer lifetime value is taking almost a center stage within J4. And many of the reports will have CLV information built into them. And that's important because hopefully it will minimize the need to do so much of, let's say, advanced analysis. And this will help you pick the interest within the team, show them the power of this information, so then you can invest into doing sophisticated additional modeling that may not be available within the UI itself. But this is a huge leap forward for companies to have access to this information. And on the next slide, You can see a few more examples and additional metrics that are becoming available as part of GA4, such as lifetime value average, lifetime engagement, lifetime transactions, and many others. So the first step that companies can take is literally right there. And then we can decide now that we have access to the information and we start building segments based on this information. Can we generate value for our business? And then focus even more on doing this type of analysis. Leigh, Rohit, since we have a few more minutes, maybe I can ask you another question. Another theme that we heard throughout the discussion today was around the first-party data strategy. How do you think about that topic?
Again, a great question, Michael, which is so much relevant now more than ever when there are significant changes happening in the industry about how the browsing data is tracked and captured, which eventually affects how marketers reach out to their consumers and measure the impact of their work. That's where the first-party data becomes so much valuable to any organization. This is the data which is given to us directly by our consumers. This is the golden data, which is most accurate, reliable, and relevant to our business. And with all this data privacy and protection laws and directives nowadays, it allows us to enforce all those regulations much more easily and consistently on it. And of course, since we own the data, we collect the data, and even in long term, it's a considerable amount of money saving in case we need to purchase this data from someone else. But more often than not, I've seen that organizations struggle with two things, both the quality and the quantity of the first-party data. Even if we have the data, it's like kind of spread across multiple silos, and it's not consistent, which makes it difficult to join the dots and then get a comprehensive picture about our consumers. We should definitely aim to bring these silos under one hood, a central repository of data like CDP. We have talked about CDP so many times, but that's where it becomes valuable, where we can connect the dots, and it should then become a go-to place for like marketers to understand the consumer better, and also like the tech teams comprising of data analysts or data scientists to do their advanced analytics. At the same time, if you talk about the quantity of the data, definitely organizations should also try to expand their consumer data capture capabilities. With so much focus on the data privacy these days, consumers nowadays, they are cautious that what exactly they are sharing with us. That's where organization needs to step up their privacy policies, their internal processes to handle the PII data. Information. Moreover, we also need to try to engage them more with us, so that we collect more data about them, like during this process when they're engaging with us, we collect more and more rich data about them. I give an example at what we did at Clinique. We launched clinical reality a couple of years ago. This is an AI-powered virtual diagnostic tool where consumers, they just upload their picture, answer a few questions about themselves, their likes and dislikes, and then we diagnose their primary skin concern, whether it's fatigue or lines or wrinkles or hyperpigmentation or acne. It's a fun, engaging experience for our consumers, but the data captured during that experience is so valuable for us to understand them better and recommend them right products and more personalized experience going forward. And I believe that's what our consumers need from us. I hope I answered your question.
Absolutely, you did. Leigh, anything to add?
Yeah, I think it's really comes back to that experience. And once you have the data, how do you use marketing automation and personalization to craft that experience? Because like half the equation is finding those people, putting together that holistic view of that person, so that then you can really take the experience, especially online or in applications, to the next level, which means you have to have a whole host of other technologies to try to execute that in real time. But we're on a journey to trying to do that.
Yeah. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Pat, back to you.